Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for this latest Rootwurks webinar, How Food Safety Can Save You Money. My name is Ben Hartman. I'm the content manager here at Rootwurks, and I'll be your host for this webinar today. So as you know, in the food industry, there's a lot of food safety guidelines and best practices that are very important, but can be time-consuming and expensive, and can be something of an investment for companies. In this webinar, though, we're going to look at how these, instead of being a burden, can actually save you money and actually can make a lot of good economic sense. And also how the alternative that can be quite costly, more costly than implementing them. So to help make sense of all that, we've got an expert here today. So let's go ahead and introduce her. We got Stacey Brown. She's a food safety consultant and auditor with ASI Food Safety. Stacey has spent more than 15 years in the food industry in all types of roles, from product developer to food safety auditor. She's a certified SQF contract lead auditor and a CSQ lead auditor. Let's see, in 2024, she was nominated for SQF Auditor of the Year. And not to be outdone, she's also working on a cookbook and is a hockey fan. So a lot of things going on there, and we're just happy to have you on here, Stacey. How's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but yeah, all good down here in Texas.
Yeah, we had a little bit of delay, so anybody watching out there, apologies. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I know it's kind of a broad one, a little bit, but I thought I'd ask, how would you describe what food safety is? I know it's quite a large one, but are these somebody to ask you, what would be your kind of like?
Sure, yeah. Food safety is just everybody ensuring that the food that we're consuming or producing is made in a safe manner, just so we don't get people sick, or create foodborne illnesses, and also allowing people to have confidence in our food system. It's not a perfect system, but the things that we do as individuals can have a huge impact on the whole system. So just, not filling something out or not documenting something could lead to liability issues for your company, or somebody forgets to do it, and it could lead to a foodborne illness. So it's really just keeping our food supply safe.
Mm-hmm. And when we talk about it, is it usually more like the regulations and the rules you have to follow, or kind of best practices industry, or is it just a combination of the two?
Yes, all of those. So, we put regulations in place, obviously, to have some standardization and what are the kind of rules. This is how you have to document everything. And it brings consistency to the industry. And then and that's the baseline. That's the minimum you have to follow. But the industry creates best practices saying, hey, yeah, the regs are here, but we think they should be here. And we are going to incorporate those into our businesses, and we're going to communicate those to other people, and we're going to share those business best practices. So we as an industry can come together and even further continuously improve our food safety systems.
Mm-hmm. So how do these systems protect customers? Is it just, just something as simple as keeping people from getting sick? How would you describe
keep people from getting sick, create industry standards, constantly improve and continuously improve the system. But ultimately, it is to prevent foodborne illnesses, making sure that the food that we're producing in the manner that we're producing it prevents foodborne outbreaks and death. I mean, like the ultimate thing we're trying to prevent is killing people. It's always a good thing.
Right, which is a pretty clear goal. Don't kill anyone.
Yeah, always a good motto for your business. Don't kill anyone.
Yeah, well, depending on the business, but yes, for the most part.
Right.
But there's somebody who maybe doesn't understands anything. So maybe not everybody's had food poisoning before. But how bad can a recall or like a foodborne illness be for consumers?
Well, a foodborne illness and outbreak, I mean, you've seen the news and you've seen how these things can affect you. You get a pathogen outbreak, E. coli, listeria, salmonella, it can lead to death. Especially in vulnerable populations. But even if it doesn't lead to your immediate death, which is bad enough, there are long-term health implications, especially for something like E. coli, where it can damage your kidneys, it can damage your organs, and then you've got a lifelong issue to deal with. So that's why it's so dangerous. I would challenge, we've all had food poisoning, or we call it the stomach flu. There's no such thing. You probably had some type of, either minor or major, if you've had vomiting, diarrhea, anything like that, after eating, 6 to 48 hours after eating, I would challenge that you probably had a foodborne illness. Some of them are a lot more severe than others. Some require hospitalization. So, and again, some of them lead to death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think anybody's like, you've had it if you've had like anything.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's not a lot of mistake in it. And just to think that somebody who's been in that situation that can get much worse, you realize how grave it is.
Yeah.
And for a company, what does it mean, like when there is a foodborne illness and it's linked back to your product? What does the fallout for a company usually look like?
Well, it's pretty immense. So first, companies want to build trust with their consumers. And when you have a foodborne illness outbreak that you're responsible for, you've lost the consumer trust. And to get that consumer trust back, it takes a lot of work and effort. And sometimes it never comes back. All right. So, but there's a business implication of that. If you're pulling product off the shelf and you're off the shelf for a while, it's a very competitive market out there. So, your competitors are going to take advantage of your misfortune, and they're going to try and get product in your shelf space. And then you're going to have to try and get that product back or get that shelf space back. It's very competitive, very difficult. And then also the people you're distributing through. So the big box stores or the grocery stores, they don't want to run the risk. So they're like, we'll take some of your product back, but we're not taking all of it back. So you lose market share, you lose trust. And it takes a lot of money and time and effort to get that back, if you can get that back. And, a lot of the larger companies can absorb these costs that, the marketing costs, the pull product off shelves, the logistics costs, they can absorb that. Smaller companies cannot. I always say, a small to medium-sized company is one massive, one recall short of going out of business.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, I feel like it's a saying I've heard before, but like reputation, it can take years to develop, but a moment to lose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've lived through recalls, and the market share that we lost and how long it took to get back. One product that I was familiar with the company that I worked with, it took them 5 years to get their market share back. 5 years to get market share back. That's millions of dollars. So yeah, it can be very costly.
And how does it help you keep this from happening? I mean, just these practices.
Well, I think you have to approach food safety in a completely different manner than it's always been approached. It's always been looked at as, it's something we have to do, a kind of drudgery. Mm-hmm. I think businesses have to look at food safety as an investment. We are investing in our business. We are investing these processes and parameters in our business to prevent a recall, to prevent a foodborne illness outbreak. So it's all the attitude that you go in with it. If you're looking at it as just, it's wasting us money and it's something we have to do for regulatory reasons, that attitude kind of permeates and creates a culture of not something that we should do because it's the right thing to do and it's good for our business, but the government makes us do it, or something of that nature. So attitude, a good attitude will help.
So good attitude is one of the main more important things, I guess, because when we look at the food safety things, I think it's often, and kind of like the way we started here was, okay, so you've got the kind of potential sort of catastrophic thing that could happen, and this will keep that from happening. So, so it's a benefit in terms of like as a preventative measure, but how is it also like a qualitative one? Like it also, can help things. You mentioned that when we spoke was about how it can, boost efficiency. When you're unsafe. Like what are the not just...
Yeah, and that's another important aspect to look at it. When you are running a very consistent product and you're doing things consistently, following not only your processing parameters, but also your food safety parameters, your OSHA parameters, those are very important too. When you're following those, you build efficiencies. And as you build efficiencies, that can be a cost saving in and of itself. If you are able to produce good quality product consistently faster, it becomes less expensive. So again, that investment in your business can lead to profitability. It can mean the difference between profitability. You could be one recall short of either being out of business, or if you don't follow the processing parameters and the food safety guidelines that you've set, you have product that you've made that's now wasted, non-conforming product that has to now be thrown away, or you've got to store it until you figure out what you're going to do with it, or you have to try and rework it. And maybe your product can't be reworked and all you can do is throw it away. So you've all the hundreds of, maybe thousands of dollars in processing costs, just running your equipment, paying your employees, the cost of the ingredients, the cost of the packaging, the cost of disposal. If you're going to send, 3, 4, 5 pallets of stuff to your landfill, you're going to be charged for those things. Mm-hmm. And so the money that you are spending could mean the difference between whether you're profitable that year or you're not profitable. So that's where food safety and these guidelines can help you, because they do have a heavily, which is not the most fun part, documentation, but it is a process. And if you have a good process that's efficient, it can save you money and make you money.
Yeah. I think one aspect of it, in terms of that, it's the waste aspect. Does it help, like if things are cleaner and more safe and all that in the workplace, does it kind of extend the shelf life of products and things that are
not necessarily extend the shelf life, but you can be more efficient in the way you make it, get it out your door faster to the consumer faster. So they're consuming it faster. So, in some ways, yes, that's more processing parameters. But for sure, if you don't make something that's, clean and safe and you put it in a package, it is going to affect your shelf life. I mean, it's going to either go bad or, not be the high quality that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. There's certain, there is the food traceability list that the FDA has, where there's specific, ones that are just more dangerous if you're dealing with them. Let's say
sure.
Dairy or fish or... How would you describe it?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, just saying, like, what type of, food products are more critical than others in terms of some of these safety measures?
Sure, yeah. So anything that would be ready to eat, right? That you're, cookies, cakes, beef jerky, all that kind of stuff, that is a ready to eat product that the consumer is not. There's no heat step. Or there is a heat step and then it's being sold just as ready to eat. Those are a little bit more higher risk. There are some processing parameters that we can put into place that lower the risk, but anything ready to eat is generally considered higher risk. High risk foods are anything that is sold raw or, obviously meat. Anything that relies on the consumer to have to, do that final kind of kill step. Or the handling of it, or it's just the nature of it. Just it's raw. So raw meat is always a good one that we cite. That is a high risk process. Even I'm not talking just the slaughter side of it. That is obviously high risk, and there's a lot of parameters in place. But even taking that and portioning those you go buy a steak at your butcher, or you go buy a package of chicken. How has that not only been processed and cut up and everything put in the package, but distributed through the logistics chain? Have temperature measures been monitored and kept that way? So those are, the high risk things have always been on the radar, but, we probably make a lot more low risk food that still need to have that attention. We think about food safety in the sense of just pathogens and getting people sick, but we can injure people other ways. Chemical, use too much cleaning solution in your cleaning of your system and you didn't rinse it properly. And now you have a chemical contaminant. That could get somebody sick, right? A physical contaminant, your blade of your mixer is shearing against the side of the mixer and creating metal shards. ever get a fishbone lodged in your throat? Try having a metal shard lodged in your throat, or it makes it down to your stomach and goes through your intestines. A rock, anything like that can lead to a food safety issue, a choking hazard.
Yeah.
So it's just we really focus, I think, a lot on the biological, but the chemical and physical are just as critical and important. And hence why HACCP plans always look at those three primary hazard and how do you control those hazards in that situation.
Yeah, I think it's so natural to think about. We think about it in terms of pathogens and things breaking down or spoiling, but if you look just from a reputation standpoint, even if nobody gets hurt from it, some of those other more physical, like the physical threats, could be just as bad for reputation. I was just thinking, I was trying to think of an example, but there were those ones. There was a time where it was like a frog in a bag of spinach, or I think it was or something in a bucket of chicken that was just really nasty. Don't need to remind anybody. Even if it doesn't get anybody hurt, that goes viral, and that doesn't.
Yeah, and that can lead to a secondary incident. So if you have a bug in a bag of vegetable or something, or fruit, and it's fresh, and you eat it, okay, there is the gross factor, but that bug could have contaminants on it. It has its own microbiological issues. Right. When we talk about chemical, a lot of these things could hurt you in the sense of allergens are considered a chemical contaminant. So if most of our recalls are based on mislabeling or not, not including the allergens that are present in the product. They do it. In fact, I just read about one this morning where the company the supplier had switched ingredients, which they're supposed to notify their client about, and it had wheat and it had soy, but the original one did not. And so they now have to issue a recall for mislabeling of allergens, and that is one of our biggest ones, is mislabeling, and that's expensive, and especially where allergen contamination and people's sensitivities are so well known now. It's a big deal. So that's probably the more prominent chemical contaminant that we think about and talk about is allergens. And especially there are some that'll make you very sick. There are, peanuts people have peanut allergies that could kill them. So, anaphylactic is not for the, it's not a joke. It can, even seafood and whatnot can really cause somebody to get very, very, very sick and have to go to the hospital.
Mm-hmm. So to get back to the earlier point, when you're talking about in terms of saving money, just on a day-to-day basis, when you have a cleaner workplace, how does it run more? I guess, how does that help in terms of cost saving? And I guess also in terms of having higher quality products, are they safer ones going to be more quality?
Yeah, I mean, if you're working in a cleaner environment, your environment is probably much more efficient, and I think that's the easiest way. There's not much to it. It's a lot more efficient. You're not tripping over stuff all over the floor. People are aware. And if you have a clean environment, that says something about the culture of your site. That people really care and that you care about. And it drives the quality of your product, and it drives your food safety as well. So the cleaner your environment, obviously, and not just the environment, but your people, washing their hands effectively. That is probably our number one way that we can prevent foodborne illness, is just wash your hands. I mean, we just all lived through a pandemic where everybody's like, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. So it still holds true. It's a great way to prevent you bringing contaminants in. So especially, after employees eat lunch, they should be washing their hands, using the restroom, touching anything, touching boxes. If they're moving boxes from one area to the line, they should be washing their hands, changing gloves frequently. I'm not a huge fan of gloves because I think they give you a false sense of security, but washing your hands and just maintaining a personal cleanliness and an environmental cleanliness. And again, it leads to not having issues down the road, doing the right things.
No, it makes sense. I was thinking about it. This has been I guess a controversial sort of subject, but it made me think of maybe like a food industry equivalent of like the broken windows theory of crime, and like
absolutely,
right? When there's like graffiti and broken windows everywhere, then people kind of act accordingly. But
yep.
And so I guess maybe in a food facility, if you have like the equivalent, then people maybe are more likely to be sloppier.
Exactly. And, not for nothing, they are required. They are part of our Code of Federal Regulation, literally hand washing facilities, people washing their hands when they wash their hands, using PPE to protect the product from physical contaminants, wearing a hairnet, all those things, though they are Code of Federal Regulation, they're just the right thing to do. Right. And that's how you as an individual can prevent foodborne illnesses, and not just in factories. This is in your home too, just keeping a clean kitchen area when you cook. I mean, a lot of foodborne illnesses probably happen much more in people's kitchens than an outbreak. Though we have plenty of those too. Not so much in this country. We're lucky to catch them, but when there is an outbreak, you hear about it. I mean, how many times have we heard on a cruise ship a norovirus broke out? That is a complete human problem. That is somebody with poor hand washing and didn't wash their hands effectively have contaminated something. That's where norovirus comes from.
Yeah, and the cruise ship ones always they always go viral because they tap into something with people. That I think people picture themselves stuck on a boat.
Yep.
Everybody's in the bathroom and you're not getting off.
You're not there's no way to get off.
This is a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. No matter how the weather is, stormy seas or not.
Right.
So earlier you mentioned HACCP, and we have a HACCP certification course here at Rootwurks, so obviously we like to talk about it. But how would you describe how these HACCP guidelines can help, in terms of knowing what to do for safety?
Well, the HACCP guidelines at least give you a methodology to identify the hazards at every process step in your facility, from receiving to storing your product to prepping the ingredients to make your product to the way your line is set up. And are there any hazards in there that could contribute reasonably likely to occur illnesses? Oh, I'm sorry, reasonably likely to occur hazards. So if you're in a mixing phase, how does, is the machine set up? Is the machine cleaned well? But, are your blades not rubbing against, the side of the mixer, allowing for a physical contaminant like metal shards? Or, are you using food grade plastic or hard plastic? Are you doing an inspection, a pre-operational inspection of the belts on your line to make sure you're not missing any pieces or parts? How do your pans look when it comes out? Is there a cooling phase? Because you want to get the product cooled within a certain amount of time to prevent any foodborne illness or any pathogen contaminating it. So it looks at a process and it has you analyze at each process step what could be the chemical, biological, or physical hazards that are reasonably likely occur in that step, absent any control measures. So that's why HACCP is a good program. If you're like, I don't even know how to assess this, HACCP has been introduced to do that. Actually, it was introduced ages ago. It has been introduced to help people kind of organize it and assess it and then make decisions. Do we need a critical control point? Do we have preventative controls that allow for us to control this hazard, to know that we're controlling it and making a good, safe product?
Yeah, I guess the first thing is just to know what you need to know what you need to actually be wary of. One aspect you mentioned, equipment, and it just got me thinking, because just in terms of like the safety of the workplace itself and money and cost saving, when things are kept cleaner, let's say equipment's cleaned more often and all that, I imagine it makes it last longer. You don't have to replace things as often. And I mean, that's a big expense, I imagine.
Absolutely. Maintenance of equipment, keeping it clean, cleaning it efficiently. So sometimes it's not always about cleaning it often, but the efficiency of the cleaning that you're doing. what kind of cleaners that you're using. Are you using them at the right concentrations? Are you getting into all those nooks and crannies that, can be harborages of places where microbial growth can happen? Are you doing a preventative maintenance schedule to look at, how often do we have to grease or lube or change out gaskets and prevent any migration? Are we changing out or inspecting to make sure that the machine, is online and balanced and not, again, metal scraping against metal is going to create metal shards. That one you're going to probably hear, but when you have a 6,000 pounds of dough in a mixer and you hear that, it's probably a good chance that dough is now scrapped and going to the garbage. So, and again, that wastes money, time. People's time is very, very valuable. And a lot of these companies have production schedules that don't have a lot of built-in error. So if you're in a production schedule and you need to make 10,000 loaves of bread, and you have messed up a batch, you're now behind. And then does it mean you have to have an extra shift on the weekend? So now you're paying overtime to people. So it can cascade when you don't follow your own guidelines or the other guidelines, the regulatory business best practices or your customer requests. That's another thing that we look at from a food safety standpoint. What do your customers require? And why do they require them? Now, I will be honest, sometimes they require them, and I'm not so sure as an auditor. When I look at them, I'm like, I don't understand that, but who cares? That's what they want. They want to mitigate their liability, so that's how they manage it.
Mm-hmm. So how do you get all the employees on board with this? Is it a focus on training? Is it creating that culture? How would you?
Yeah, that's a challenge. Ultimately, people want to know what's in it for me. I mean, I wish I could say it's less that, but we want to understand, how does this benefit me if I follow all these rules outside of just keeping my job? That, at this point, it's you got to elevate you. So you have to make it matter to them. And try and instill that pride in their job. So, companies that I worked at, we were very much, part of our culture was, this is your product. So, would you want to feed it to your mother, your brother, your father, your children, that type of thing? And taking pride in your work and just a job well done, and knowing that you've made a safe food for your family, because ultimately it is your family. Your family are going to buy these products. So you want to make sure that product and any other product that you're purchasing, that they have taken as much care about your family as you take about their family.
Yeah, imagine. Yeah, also, I mean, food is so universal, obviously.
Right.
I mean, people have to understand these same things that affect the things that they eat. So, beyond just like the employees themselves, what about the management or people who are leading the company? What sort of attitude or approach should they have to this?
So management drives it all right? The leadership of your site really are the ones that drive the culture. If they don't care, why should their employees care? All right. If they look at food safety as we have to do it and we're just going to do the bare minimum, that's what their employees are going to do. So leadership drives a culture. And their role in it is so vital. It's so vital. I am an SQF auditor, and one of the first things, actually one of the last things I audit, but the first thing that is in the SQF audit is management commitment. How committed is management? How are they approaching their food safety culture? What are they doing to drive food safety culture? And food safety culture is not just about food safety. How do they drive employment culture and employee engagement? What are their OSHA safety? Do they care that the people who are driving forklifts aren't trained, even though by law they have to be? Do they care that, this thing needs to be hung? Let's just put a pallet on a forklift and we'll raise the pallet, with the person on top of it, instead of, investing in buying a proper ladder. And these are all things I've seen. But if your leadership team doesn't care, nobody's going to care, because leadership is the one who are running the company. They're the ones who are looking at the dollars and cents. But that's why I always say, leadership has to look at food safety as an investment. It's an investment in your business that is going to give you long-term returns. And it's a good ROI. It really, really is. Because like I said at the beginning, most companies are one good recall away from, being out of business, losing significant money, and a recall. It's not just the product. If you have to issue an official recall, even if it's voluntarily, the FDA tells you to do it, which is more voluntold, you are going to be fined significantly. They're going to come in and start doing some investigative, and they'll look through your paperwork. All right. So think of it like the IRS. They are going to fine you. And if you are at fault, they will fine you heavily.
You mentioned speaking of paperwork, how important is record keeping, making sure that you keep records of everything you do and you can prove it?
Yeah. Vital. If you didn't document it, it didn't happen. All right. If you say, oh, we do these checks every 30 minutes and your paperwork does not reflect that, or it can't be verified that you've done it, then you didn't do it. You have to look at all this documentation. And this is kind of what I tell clients. If you had to defend this document in a court of law, you're on the witness stand and a lawyer is asking you, please explain what this means, and you can't explain it, then you're probably going to be held liable for it. All your documents are about liability mitigation. For you, that's the approach you have to have. So if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. And I'm not talking about, documentation doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be time consuming, but it has to be accurate. All right. So if your policies and procedures tell me you do this, and as an auditor, I look and I don't see that, then you're not following your policies and procedures. And then it's two questions. Why do you have your policy and procedure written that way? And then why are you not following it? So how did you come up with, we are going to do this XYZ? Might be regulatory requirements, might be a business best practice, or somebody, at the site said, this is how I've done it before. And so we're going to continue to do it that way. Or it could be a customer request. They could say, we want you to take this temperature every 2 hours. Okay, we will. But you must document those things. And you have to document your policies and procedures as well. Those are so everybody is doing the same thing all the time to protect your company from liability. That's really what it comes down to a lot of times, because you're preventing those recalls. You're preventing those mistakes in production that cause you to lose money.
Right. Like with so many things, not just in this industry, but I guess in a wider sense as well, it's the preventative costs are much lower than the corrective ones.
Absolutely. I guess the old adage is true. We never have the time to do it right, but we always have time to do it over. Same thing could be said for money. We never have the money to do it right the first time, but we always seem to have money to do it right the second time.
Yeah.
And that's not true. You're losing money when you have that attitude, because you've done it now twice and you've only got one sellable result out of it.
Yeah. It's just a waste of time and money, which is what you were worried about to begin with. So I guess before we wrap up here, if you were to say to somebody, or somebody comes to you and they have, let's say, a small, medium company, not necessarily, but what are, say, 3 or 4 kind of initial steps, crucial steps to get food safety program in place?
So the first thing I would do is hire a good consultant. All right. I work for a certifying body. Most of the certifying bodies have a consulting arm. I would get an expert in there. It is a big program. It's a little bit, it's not complicated or complex, but it's been made complicated and complex. The wording, understanding that vocabulary is very, very important. So get an expert in there to help you. Again, you're investing in your business. Invest in a good expert and partner. Consider them a partner in your food safety journey. So that's probably one of the first things I would do. And then have them come in, kind of do a gap analysis, give you a roadmap to start the process, and then get going. Second thing kind of parallels the first thing is go get HACCP certified. Most audit programs or most food safety programs that are auditable do look at HACCP. The US, we do have a PCQI, which is a um, preventative control qualified individual. You can also go take that training. It incorporates a lot of HACCP. There's some extra to it, but a lot of the GMP audits that get done, or SQF, any of the GFSI, cover a lot of what's going on in preventative controls, the FSMA plans. Those are the first two things I would do. All right. And then start looking for training opportunities to help train your team, help train yourself in what food safety is and why it is so important. But there's tons of resources out there. One of my favorite resources, and every state has this, is an extension program through their land grant university. So I know a few, obviously Texas A&M, because I live in Texas, so I'm familiar with that. Kansas State University, I'm familiar with that one because that's where I went to grad school. UMass Amherst from Massachusetts. University of California, Davis also has a land grant school, and it has an extension program. This is where you can get some expert advice in different things, in environmental monitoring or microbiology, or just basic food science that can help you learn more, because you're just going to need to be a sponge and learn. But if you get a good plan in place, get your HACCP, understanding HACCP, and a good consultant and partner, certifying body or an independent consultant, you will be able to do a food safety plan. And at first it's going to seem challenging and you're going to be overwhelmed, but it's like any new project. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah. So there's not too much to be scared of.
No. And, I do a lot of consulting through my certifying body. And I always like to say I'm a tough consultant, but I want to get you in a really good place and answer those questions, because I view that as we are partners in food safety and making sure our food safety supply is in good, our food supply is in a good, safe place. So, don't look at it as an adversarial of, oh, this is something I have to do, but look at us as partners in making sure that your family is getting the best quality food out of the manufacturers out there.
That's great. Well, Stacey, there's been quite a few good takeaways and some great quotes here today.
Thanks.
It's been encouraging. It's something that can be a tough endeavor in a lot of ways, but also so crucial, and also something that doesn't have to feel like rocket science.
It's not rocket science, but it is the direction of the business industry, and especially of food. Food safety is becoming such a critical point in everybody's food business. It is not going away, and it's not getting smaller. All right. If anything, we'll see, I don't know about more regulations, but more business requirements. I do the SQF, the GFSI is going to add, because they learn too. They get best business practices, and they're going to learn. It is not going to get smaller, and it is not going away. So if you're interested in starting a food business, or you are, you're selling at a farmer's market, you're looking to get into the big box stores, if you don't have a food safety plan now, that should be your number one priority to get it. Give us a call, give somebody a call. And let us, because if you're small, it's a lot easier, when you don't have a client breathing down your neck saying, you need to be SQF certified, or we're not going to take your product, as opposed to, I get my feet wet with GMP audits and understanding a smaller program before I have to jump into a bigger one. So if you've got a small business like that and you're thinking about it, pull the trigger and do it. Invest in your business, invest in your food safety.
That's awesome. It makes perfect sense. Well, if people want to see more about what you all do at ASI, here's where they can check out and learn more about Stacey and so many of the things that we talked about today. We talked a lot about learning and training and creating that culture, which is really at the foundation of what we do here at Rootwurks. If you want to check us out on rootworks.com, you can learn about the Rootwurks LXP, our the learning experience platform. That's our platform for training, food safety training and education, also compliance management. So check that out. Also, our HACCP course is still there.
Yep.
And check out all of that, and we'll join us at the next webinar.
Yeah.
And thanks so much for being here today, Stacey.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Hope they learned something.
Oh, guarantee.
Awesome.
Thanks. See you next time.
See ya.
Bye, guys.